Welcome to the channel, Coin Hunters. Today, we're taking a closer look at the Liberty State $quarter coin, a piece of American coinage that may look ordinary at first glance but can become much more interesting when you know what details to look for. From its design and mint mark to its condition, striking quality, and unusual varieties, every little feature can make a difference to collectors. So before you spend or overlook one of these quarters, take a moment to examine it closely. As we explore this coin, we'll look at the history behind the quarter, the important design elements, and the characteristics that collectors pay attention to when searching through pocket change, old collections, and coin rolls. Some examples are common, while others can attract much stronger collector interest because of scarcity, condition, or unusual minting characteristics. We'll also examine the areas where potential errors and varieties may appear, including the lettering, date, mint mark, rim, edge, and overall strike. Remember, not every unusual-looking coin is automatically valuable, so careful examination is essential. Condition matters too. A sharply detailed coin with attractive surfaces can be far more desirable than a heavily worn example. The Nevada State Quarter is a fascinating piece of American history, but before we begin, there is an important detail that makes this coin even more interesting. Nevada became a state in 1864, while the Nevada State Quarter was not struck until 2006, with the Philadelphia Mint producing examples marked with a P mint mark. That means when you see 1864 associated with this coin, you are looking at Nevada's statehood year, not the date of the quarter itself. The 2006 P Nevada Quarter belongs to the 50 State Quarters program, a massive U.S. coinage project that turned ordinary pocket change into miniature pieces of American history. Its reverse design captures the spirit of Nevada with rugged mountains, the open landscape, and three powerful symbols: the wild horses that represent the state's famous Mustang heritage, the desert landscape, and the brilliant sun rising behind the mountains. The words Nevada, 1864, EPLURIBUSUNUM, and 2006 frame the design, while the obverse carries the familiar portrait of George Washington. At first glance, it may look like nothing more than another modern quarter, but that ordinary appearance is exactly what makes coin hunting so exciting, because unusual minting characteristics can sometimes transform a common coin into a much more interesting collectible. Now take a moment and imagine finding one of these quarters in an old jar, a drawer, a cash register, or a collection that has been sitting untouched for years. You pick it up expecting to see a normal quarter, but under bright light something seems different. Perhaps the lettering looks strangely doubled, the rim appears unusual, the strike seems slightly off-center, or the surfaces have an unusually sharp and brilliant appearance. This is where the real investigation begins. A genuine collectible variety or mint error is not created simply because a coin looks old, dirty, scratched, or different from another quarter. Collectors carefully distinguish actual mint-made characteristics from damage that happened after the coin left the United States Mint. The 2006 P Nevada Quarter was produced in enormous numbers, so the normal example is generally not rare simply because of its date. The excitement comes from identifying an authentic error, an unusual variety, or an exceptionally preserved specimen. That distinction is critical, because two coins that look almost identical to an inexperienced eye can have dramatically different collector interest, while a coin that looks spectacular at first may turn out to be nothing more than ordinary circulation damage. The first clues should be visual, but your examination should be careful and methodical. Start with the edge and rim. Look for a rim that appears unusually broad, narrow, uneven, or dramatically distorted compared with a normal Nevada quarter. Next, study the strike alignment. A coin struck slightly away from the intended position can show a genuine off-center error, and the degree of displacement matters greatly when collectors evaluate such pieces. Then examine the lettering and major design elements under magnification. Look closely at words such as Nevada, Liberty, and in God we trust, watching for forms of doubling that appear to be part of the original minting process rather than scratches or machine damage. Also inspect the date and mint mark, especially the P identifying Philadelphia production. Metal color can provide another clue, but color alone is never proof of an error. Environmental exposure, cleaning, chemicals, heat, and corrosion can all change the appearance of a coin. Even the weight can be useful. A significant weight difference from the expected specifications may justify further investigation, but a household scale is only a screening tool, not authentication. The goal is not to convince yourself that every unusual mark means treasure. The goal is to eliminate ordinary explanations until only a genuinely interesting possibility remains. And then there is condition, one of the most important factors in the entire story. A Nevada quarter that spent years circulating through pockets, vending machines, parking meters, and cash drawers can accumulate scratches, dents, discoloration, and contact marks, while a carefully preserved specimen can retain remarkably sharp details and attractive surfaces. Look at the horse designs, mountain details, lettering, Washington's portrait, and the original luster across the fields. Do not clean the coin in an attempt to make it look more valuable. Harsh cleaning can permanently damage the surfaces and may reduce collector appeal. Instead, compare the coin with confirmed normal examples and study photographs of documented varieties and errors. If something appears genuinely unusual, professional authentication becomes extremely important. A respected grading and authentication service can determine whether a suspected mint error is legitimate and can assign a condition grade when appropriate. This matters because online photographs, social media claims, and dramatic auction stories can make ordinary coins appear extraordinarily valuable. The strongest discoveries are supported by evidence, correct specifications, documented characteristics, strong condition, and credible authentication. Now comes the question that makes every coin hunter lean closer. What could an unusual Nevada quarter actually be worth? The answer depends entirely on what the coin really is, and the figures we discuss here are illustrative possibilities rather than guaranteed market prices. In a storytelling value ladder, a coin with a minor but legitimate collectible variation might be imagined in the $2,500 to $3,500 range, while a significantly more notable and authenticated example could create a hypothetical $9,000 level scenario. An exceptionally high-grade coin might be discussed around $5,000 in an illustrative collector market story, while an unusual mint anomaly could potentially enter a $6,000 scenario if it were genuinely rare and strongly demanded. A particularly rare collector piece might be framed around $7,500, an exceptionally preserved or uncommon example around $8,000, and an unusual discovery with strong collector demand around $8,500. In an extraordinary hypothetical case involving a major authenticated error or historically significant characteristic, the story could climb toward $9,000. But these numbers should never be treated as promises, fixed prices, or evidence that every 2006 Nevada quarter is worth thousands of dollars. Real market value depends on authentication, rarity, condition, demand, auction results, provenance, and the exact nature of the error or variety. Think about what that difference could mean emotionally. Finding an authenticated rare coin worth several $1,000s would not simply be finding spare change. It could feel like discovering a sudden windfall hiding in plain sight. For some collectors, a valuable discovery might represent a meaningful financial boost, perhaps even resembling part of a down payment on a home, while for another person it might become a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that changes the way they look at every coin they encounter. But the most important reward is not always the price. The Nevada quarter connects a modern pocket coin to a much older story, beginning with Nevada's admission to the Union in 1864. Every example carries that historical reference, and millions of them traveled through American commerce after their release in 2006. That is what makes coin collecting so compelling. History can move through your hands without announcing itself. A quarter can be ordinary in one moment and fascinating in the next, not because someone declares it valuable, but because careful observation reveals something that most people would never notice. That sense of possibility is what keeps collectors checking jars, rolls, inherited collections, and forgotten boxes. So if you think you have a special 2006 Nevada quarter, slow down before making any assumptions. Place it on a soft surface, use good lighting, and compare both sides with a known normal example. Check the weight with an accurate scale, examine the metal color without attempting to clean it, inspect the rim for genuine mint-made abnormalities, study the strike alignment, and use magnification to investigate possible doubling in the lettering and dates. Look for evidence that the unusual feature was created at the mint, rather than caused later by coins rubbing together, machinery, chemicals, or deliberate alteration. Photograph the coin clearly from multiple angles, record its condition, and if the evidence looks convincing, seek an experienced numismatist or professional authentication and grading service before accepting any extraordinary valuation. Remember, a dramatic internet claim is not the same thing as a documented sale. The difference between an ordinary quarter and a valuable error can sometimes be incredibly subtle, which is why patience, comparison, and professional verification are more powerful than excitement. And that brings us to the mystery hiding inside this seemingly ordinary Nevada quarter. Somewhere, perhaps sitting unnoticed in a collection or quietly passing from one person to another, there may be a piece with a genuine mint-made characteristic that tells a story far more unusual than its face value suggests. The 1864 connection reminds us that every Nevada quarter carries a piece of state history, while the 2006 date tells us we are looking at a modern chapter in the story of American coinage. Most examples will remain ordinary circulating quarters, and that is perfectly normal, but the possibility of an authentic error, remarkable variety, or exceptional condition is what keeps the hunt alive. So the next time a Nevada quarter lands in your hand, don't spend it automatically. Turn it over, inspect the rim, study the lettering, check the alignment, and ask yourself one question. What if this is the one everyone else overlooked? Because the rarest-looking treasure may not be locked inside a museum, it may be hiding in an everyday place, waiting for someone patient enough to notice. And just when you think you've seen everything modern American coinage has to offer, the next coin could reveal an even more shocking mistake, rarity, or hidden story that changes everything you thought you knew about pocket change. Arizona's Liberty State Quarter tells a story that begins with a fascinating contrast between history and modern coinage. Arizona entered the Union as the 48th state in 1912, yet the circulating quarter that carries its identity was struck nearly a century later, in 2008, including the 2008 issue from the Philadelphia Mint. At first glance, it may look like an ordinary quarter pulled from a cash register, but its design is packed with symbolism, featuring the dramatic Grand Canyon and the saguaro cactus that immediately connect the coin to Arizona's landscape. Around the rim, the familiar inscriptions United States of America, Arizona, quarter dollar, and EPLURIBUS UNUM frame a design that feels almost like a miniature postcard from the American Southwest. The coin belongs to the 50 State Quarters program, one of the most widely collected modern U.S. coin series, which means millions of examples were produced. But that does not mean every individual piece is identical in condition or quality. What makes a seemingly ordinary Arizona quarter interesting is the possibility that a particular coin may have unusual preservation, a striking characteristic, or a genuine mint error that separates it from the enormous population of normal examples. Look closely at the reverse, and you can see why this design attracts collectors even before rarity enters the conversation. The Grand Canyon dominates the scene, while a tall saguaro cactus rises prominently in the foreground, creating a powerful sense of depth despite the coin being only about an inch across. The lettering, the canyon lines, the cactus details, and the surrounding rim all provide areas where the quality of the strike can be examined. On a normal circulation coin, years of contact with other coins can soften those details, flatten high points, and introduce scratches or discoloration, while an exceptionally preserved example can retain sharper surfaces and more attractive luster. The 2008 P designation is particularly important because the P identifies Philadelphia as the mint where that particular issue was produced. Remember, however, that the presence of a mint mark alone does not make the coin rare. Collectors are interested in the complete combination of date, mint, condition, strike quality, and any verified variety or error. That is where the story becomes more exciting, because two Arizona quarters that look almost identical to a casual observer can have dramatically different collector appeal when examined under proper lighting and magnification. Now comes the part where careful observation can turn an everyday coin into a genuine collecting mystery. Start with the rim and edge, looking for anything that appears dramatically different from the normal manufacturing pattern, but do not mistake ordinary damage for a mint error. Rotate the coin slowly and compare the lettering and major design elements for signs of unusual doubling, especially where letters or numbers appear to show a distinct secondary image rather than simple wear or machine damage. Check the strike alignment as well, because a legitimate striking error can sometimes produce a noticeably off-center design or another unusual characteristic. Examine the metal color across the obverse and reverse, remembering that discoloration, chemical exposure, cleaning, or environmental damage can create appearances that are interesting but not necessarily valuable errors. Weight can also provide an important clue. A significant difference from the expected specifications may justify further investigation, although a household scale is only a starting point and should never be treated as proof of rarity. The goal is not to convince yourself that every strange-looking quarter is valuable. The goal is to document what you actually see and separate genuine mint-made characteristics from damage that happened after the coin entered circulation. And this is where the Arizona quarter can become especially intriguing for collectors, because modern coins are produced in enormous quantities and tiny manufacturing differences can become the subject of serious research. A coin might display an unusual strike, a dilated characteristic, an off-center impression, a dramatic planchet problem, or another authenticated mint error, and each category can attract a different level of attention. But there is a crucial distinction between a verified mint error and a coin that simply looks unusual. Scratches, dents, discoloration, flattened rims, and alterations made after leaving the mint can sometimes create dramatic appearances without adding collector value. That is why professional authentication matters so much. If you believe your 2008 P Arizona quarter has an unusual feature, photograph both sides, record its weight using an accurate scale, avoid cleaning or polishing it, and compare it with trusted references before making any assumptions. For particularly unusual pieces, certification from a respected professional grading or authentication service can provide the evidence collectors need to establish that the characteristic is genuine. When people hear stories about valuable coins, it is easy to imagine that every old or unusual quarter could instantly become a fortune, but the real collecting world is much more nuanced. As an illustrative storytelling ladder, a coin with a minor but interesting variation might be imagined in the $2,500 to $3,500 range, while a substantially more notable and authenticated example could inspire a hypothetical discussion around $9,000. A truly high-grade coin might be discussed around $5,000 in a fictional market scenario, while an unusual mint anomaly could reach an illustrative $6,000. A rare collector piece, $7,500. An exceptionally preserved or uncommon example, $8,000. And an unusual discovery with strong collector demand, $8,500. In an extraordinary or historically significant scenario, the story could climb toward $9,000. But these figures are illustrative possibilities for storytelling, not guaranteed prices, and they should never be presented as the standard value of a normal 2008 Arizona quarter. Actual market value depends on authentication, grade, eye appeal, rarity, demand, and documented auction or dealer results. A coin worth only face value in ordinary condition can sometimes sit beside a much more interesting error worth substantially more, which is exactly why collectors inspect their change rather than automatically dismissing it. Imagine finding a coin in an old jar, a forgotten drawer, or a handful of change, and discovering that it contains a legitimate characteristic collectors have been searching for. The emotional impact can be enormous because the coin may have cost only 25 cents, yet a truly rare and authenticated example could represent a sudden windfall in the imagination of the finder, perhaps even something comparable to a down payment on a home in an extreme hypothetical scenario. That is the dream that keeps people searching, but responsible collecting means keeping excitement under control. Never clean the coin to make it look newer, never scrape away discoloration, and never try to manufacture an error yourself, because altering a coin destroys the very evidence that could make it collectible. Instead, place the piece safely in a protective holder, inspect it under neutral light, photograph the suspected feature, compare it with confirmed examples, and seek an expert opinion when the evidence appears convincing. The most valuable discovery is not necessarily the most dramatic-looking coin. Sometimes it is the quiet little quarter with one authentic, mint-created characteristic that survives careful examination. So the next time a 2008 Arizona quarter lands in your hand, pause before spending it, because you may be holding a tiny piece of the story connecting Arizona's 1912 statehood with one of the most ambitious coin collecting programs in modern American history. Most examples will be ordinary, and that is exactly what makes the hunt so compelling. You never know which coin will be completely normal and which one will contain the unusual combination of condition, strike, variety, or verified error that makes collectors take a second look. Check the weight, study the metal color, inspect the rim, examine the strike alignment, look carefully for genuine letter doubling, and above all, remember that professional authentication is the final step when something truly unusual appears. Somewhere in an everyday pocket, an old collection, a forgotten container, or a simple handful of change, a surprising coin could still be waiting. And if you think this Arizona quarter is interesting, keep watching, because the next coin may have an even stranger history, a more dramatic minting mistake, and a value story that could make this ordinary-looking quarter seem like just the beginning.